until the end. You can either put them in the group in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and talk with your questions. So today I'll be talking about the effects of skipping breakfast. I chose this because I am annoyed and frustrated with all the information that is out there about this egg is good, waffles are bad, things like that. You guys probably have seen, okay, all these different titles about, side effects of cereal. Is skipping breakfast good? Skipping breakfast bad? Science says this, science says that. And I just really wanted to hone down and find out the real evidence-based, answers for it. So my objectives for today for this presentation is I'm going to be going over the history of breakfast, and then my 3 research studies is the effects on lipid profile, the risks of coronary artery disease, the quality of breakfast, and then a summary of the presentation, and then your takeaway. So the history of breakfast, way back in ancient Egypt, they did eat a morning meal, but it did consist of beer, bread, onions before working on the fields. Later on, mid-ages, breakfast was actually considered a sin if someone ate it before mass. If someone ate breakfast, they were seen weak. Usually, mothers, infants, little kids would eat the breakfast, but it was also acceptable for the laboring class. So again, working on the fields early in the morning. In the 1600s, breakfast began to look like a cooked breakfast, where you would have your eggs and your meat. Later on, in the 1800s, the Industrial Revolution came about. Kellogg's cereal was created, canned fruit juice, ham and egg sandwiches. Actually, a fun story I would like to add to this. I listened to a podcast with Kellogg's and how Frosted Flakes came about. Frosted Flakes, Kellogg actually wanted to create granola and a different type of granola, and with the compression, the machinery and everything, he wanted it to be like a puffier, airy type of item, but it actually came out to be flat. And he didn't want to junk it or anything just because of how much money he put into this product already. So he used that as a cold cereal and named it Frosted Flakes by just adding some sugar to it to have it palatable for our taste buds. So that is how Frosted Flakes came about. Moving on into the 1900s, the Great War came about with those conserved staple foods. So now bringing on those packaged food items and the type of Nutri-Grain bars, things like that. Then in the 1929s, which is weird, the cracked wheat and then creamed codfish, toast, coffee. And then the 1950s is with the, like I mentioned, the Frosted Flakes, the Eggos, frozen waffles, Dunkin' Donuts, more sugary cereals in the 1600s. In the 70s, that's when all your real restaurants came about, McDonald's, your Starbucks, more sugary cereals, and now we bring today. So what is the definition of breakfast? Well, in many research articles I have looked at, they define breakfast as the 2 hours awakening or eating it before 10 a.m. It will provide about 20 to 35% of your daily calorie intake, and it usually involves some type of milk derivative, unrefined or whole grain cereal, fresh fruit or juice without the added sugar. And in my research articles, I have found that 10 to 30% of people in the US and Europe skip breakfast. And so I thought that is a high enough percent to actually do research and to figure out, does this impact our body? So in your group chat, if you guys can just think about and put in there, yes or no, do you think breakfast skipping can impact your health? And later on, at the end of the presentation, I will hopefully be able to answer your question. All right. Now, thank you for responding. I really appreciate it. I want to move on to my first study. So my first study is the effects of breakfast skipping on lipid profile. So pretty much this study is looking at all the types of lipids with blood labs. So it was a cross-sectional study. It was a class study D. I categorized it. They excluded anyone with a family history of hypertension, diabetes, and heart attack. So what they did, it's interesting enough that this study was done at the University of a Veterinarian and Animal Science in Pakistan. They took 200 students. The reason why I thought this study was relevant is because they took the students from the ages of 20 to 25, and those students in that population usually live a busy lifestyle, so breakfast usually tends to get skipped. So what they did is they took these students and did a 24-hour dietary recall, and they were able to categorize them as rare, often, or regular eaters. Depending on, you were rare if you skipped 2 or more meals of breakfast a day out of the 3 days. If you skipped 1 out of the 3 days, or if you did not skip at all, you were considered a regular eater. They took blood samples. They did an 8-hour fasting. They looked at the cholesterol, the HDL, the LDL, the triglycerides, and blood sugar. They also collected the waist circumference, blood pressure, weight, and height. So a wide variety to see if skipping breakfast can impact the body. So the results here, they looked at the BMI and triglycerides for the first off. The study didn't really focus on the group of often. They really just honed down on if you were a regular or if you were rare. So there was a significant difference with the BMI and triglycerides. The BMI was significantly lower in the regular eaters than the rare eaters. Same thing with triglycerides. Triglycerides were significantly lower in the regular eaters compared to the rare eaters. Moving on, blood sugar was not found significant, and this is because all the blood sugar, the serum glucose, was founded in normal blood sugar range, so that 70 to 95 range. So there's no significance there, but in the weight circumference results, they did find a significant difference, a lower waist circumference in the regular eaters compared to the regular eaters. Now looking at HDL, cholesterol, and LDL, they all found significant difference. HDL, your good cholesterol, it was higher in the regular eaters compared to the rare breakfast eaters. Cholesterol, regular breakfast eaters were lower compared to the rare eaters, and LDL subjects, or the subjects that ate regular breakfast, had a lower LDL than in the rare. With blood pressure, there is no significant findings, significant difference, between either of the groups. So this study really tied together and said that the BMI, triglycerides, cholesterol, LDL, and waist circumference were higher in the groups that rarely ate breakfast. And they related this to, well, breakfast eaters, they usually tend to have being more active. And breakfast skippers usually tend to snack more. They have usually a higher cardiovascular risk and metabolic syndromes, and they usually eat more of the high fats, eat just more in general, and eat less of the fiber and other minerals and vitamins. The strengths and limitations of the study is the strengths. They did random days with their 24-hour recall. They did the recall 3 times, and they looked at blood labs. The genders were fairly equal, so study just didn't look at girls or just male. And again, kind of like I touched on, I thought the strength of 20 to 25-year-olds was good because it's in that active lifestyle range. Limitations is it was a 24-hour recall, so they could not remember maybe what exactly they ate. They did not actually state the result of the 24-hour recall, and it was in Pakistan. It wasn't, in America. My next study I want to look at is the effects of skipping breakfast with a coronary artery disease. This study is a prospective and cross-control study. It was within a year span. Exclusions was parents that were pregnant or had a history of any major illness, including cardiovascular disease. So these are the subjects were actually done in Western Indian. And so I wanted to look at what was a Western Indian diet. A Western Indian diet usually consists of high in carbs, so a lot of sugar, flour-based products, snack loaded with starches. So in India, their typical breakfasts included flatbreads, thin crepes made with lentils, steamed rice, dough pancakes, spiced potatoes. So yes, that is different than what we usually tend to eat, but not really, because we still eat those high starches food with our pancakes and our waffles. The cold cereals are high in sugar. So it still kind of relates. So I wanted to include this study. And so they took and did an association with subjects that had coronary artery disease and ones that did not. And they put them in two different categories. Breakfast eaters consisted of if they ate at least 5 breakfasts within a week, or breakfast skippers that ate breakfast less than 2 days a week. And then they took all their basic demographic information and put it together. So some of the basic demographic things that they looked at was the past medical history, the individual income, smoking habits, BMI, physical activity levels. So again, a well-rounded collection of the individuals themselves. So I apologize beforehand that this picture and it's a little blurry, but I just thought it really shows a good result of what I will be discussing. So this picture or result actually indicates risk factors for CVD or CAD, excuse me. So this study showed that diabetes was the #1 risk factor, then goes hypertension, then goes smoking, and the 4th one is breakfast skipping. You may not think that that's important, thinking that, oh, breakfast skipping, that's the 4th risk factor in getting coronary artery disease. But breakfast skipping is a higher risk factor to getting coronary artery disease than being obese or lack of physical activity. And that's what I really wanted to show you guys that this study has found. I found that very interesting. Next, this picture breaks it down, breakfast eaters and breakfast skippers. They found that breakfast skippers tend to have a higher risk factor of hypertension, enough to say that there's a significant differences between the two groups. The other risk factors of coronary artery disease, like diabetes, smoking, lack of physical activity, and obesity, there is no significant difference. So the conclusion is that breakfast skipping is an independent associate of the CAD. They have a 1.34 times more likely of getting a coronary artery disease. Habits of skipping breakfast has more of a risk than physical inactivity and obesity in India. Breakfast skipping demonstrated greater tendency of the development of hypertension. So again, I wanted to make and relate this information more to why they could find these results, and they thought it was because it would disturb the release of appetite-related hormones, causing a change in the dietary patterns. So it can decrease the satiety and increase the food consumption late in the day, which will result in a greater BMI and insulin resistance. And people that tend to skip breakfast usually eat less of the healthier foods, and they see a more harmful change in lipid levels, kind of like my last study indicated. So increased levels of triglycerides, LDLs, and lower HDLs. So strengths and limitations of this study is that There's a large sample size for the study, and again, they gathered a lot of data, a lot of the basic demographics. The limitations is that it was a preceptive study design. It was done in Western India, but again, I kind of was able to see, okay, this is what they ate for breakfast. We can kind of relate to that in the United States. And then they use questionnaires. My last study I want to talk about is just not if you eat breakfast or if you don't eat breakfast, but the quality of breakfast. So this is what this study really hones down on. So it is a cross-sectional study. They exclude students that were not in the classroom on the day of the survey. So what they did here is this study happened in Spain, and they did 5 random selected public high schools. So again, the younger age, between 12 and 17 years old. It's usually a population that, tends to skip breakfast because they're busy, they need to get to school, things like that. So again, I thought it was very relevant. So the first survey that they did was a Mediterranean Diet Quality Index. And this study, or this survey questionnaire, was actually originally made in Spain, and it consisted of 16 questions. It was originally made to see how people follow the Mediterranean diet, but they also wanted to use it in this study as well. Another questionnaire that they did with these kids is called a Kidscreen 52, self-administrated, and it covers a whole overall demographics and things of the students. Some examples are physical well-being, psychosocial, mood and emotion, self-perceptive, autonomic, parent relationship, home lifestyle, financial resources, social support, peer school environment, and social acceptance. So all in that one questionnaire, it covers all that. And then the next survey that the kids had to do is a stress one, and then the fourth one was a depression one. So these researchers took all these questionnaires from these subjects, and it approximately lasted about 60 minutes. So I just wanted to put this on here. This is the Kids Med questionnaire with the 16 questions and how it's scored and the questions there. So this study's definition of a very poor quality and good quality breakfast is indicated here. I just want to lay that out. So this study indicated that very poor quality did not eat bread or cereal or a dairy product for breakfast, but did eat a baked good. Poor quality is they ate the bread, toast, or cereal and or dairy product, but at the same time they also ate the baked good. And then good quality is they did not eat the baked good, but they ate the bread, toast, cereal, dairy product. So now with the results, this study actually found in this table showing that breakfast skippers had better results than breakfast eaters, meaning looking at the ones I have highlighted in the mood and emotions, parents' relationship and home style, and the stress, they perform better. There's a huge significant difference between the two groups, which I found very interesting because I would think that your mood would be better if you ate breakfast. The next table this study showed is looking at the quality, and it showed that in all categories, eating a good quality breakfast had a better result than eaters of a very poor quality, which makes sense. If you eat a higher sugar breakfast compared to, a protein fiber based breakfast, you will perform better. And now, again, in all categories, breakfast skippers had better results than eaters of a very poor quality diet breakfast, which makes sense to me. Again, if you give all this sugar to your body right in the breakfast, if you eat a high sugary breakfast or a high fatty breakfast compared to not eating it at all, I would think that could have an impact on your body as well. So the conclusion for this study is that high quality breakfast equaled a better score of the questionnaire, so the HQOL, and lower stress and depression. And the reason why: cereal, fruit, dairy products are considered healthy in this study, and carbs, the brain needs carbs for after a night of fasting because of the lower cortisol and the formation of tryptophan, which is serotonin, which is your happy hormone. And then also in all categories, breakfast skippers had a better result than eating a very poor quality breakfast. And to transition that information, habits of a higher added sugar actually activates and triggers depression in the brain region. And calorie restriction means that you decrease the added sugar intake, which can lead to metabolic benefits, including the neuroprotective, anti-aging, anti-inflammatory outcomes. So strengths and limitations of the study is that they had many different questionnaires, as you guys saw. Schools were randomly selected, and they used other studies to back up their information. Limitations is that it was questionnaires focusing on the Mediterranean diet, and they did not account for all factors that could affect the quality of life, but this could also have been the strength because I felt like they covered a good portion. And again, this study was done in Spain. So, a summary. Breakfast skipping affects all over. It's just not the brain or your stomach or anything. It affects everywhere in your body. So first off, how does it affect the brain? Well, if you eat breakfast, a healthier breakfast, it fuels the brain. Exercising, skipping breakfast actually increases burning, the fat burning, but eating breakfast before exercising may help the body metabolize the carbohydrates better, both during activity and later in the day. And then we found that the quality does matter. High quality breakfast is better than skipping breakfast. Going over to the heart, skipping breakfast or not can affect the heart. If you skip breakfast, it can increase the risk of hypertension and coronary artery disease. It can affect lab results. Eating breakfast can mean a healthier blood lipid profile, blood sugar controls, and tend to have a lower waist circumference. Overall, eating breakfast does reduce the daily calorie intake, increases the satiety, improves the quality of our diet, and improves insulin sensitivity at the meals we eat for the rest of the day. So my main takeaway that I want you guys to take away is eat a high quality breakfast that is high in fiber, protein, and healthier fats, and eat it within that 2 hours of awakening. And here are my references. And then if you guys have any questions for me, I will stop sharing my screen.
Good job, Elena. Thank you for presenting. I will post the evaluation link again in the chat, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to stay on and ask.
Okay, well, thank you, Elena, again for that very insightful presentation. Learned so much already, and honestly, how many times have we left the house without getting breakfast and you don't have time or you don't feel like you have time to eat? And now we have all these proven reasons why we take the time to nourish ourselves and start our days off right. And so with that, friends, this concludes our UWGB 2021 Spring Dietetic Research Review. I just want to take a moment to honor our presenters for all their hard work. And as our internship is coming to a close and there's lots of tasks at hand, and they did a really wonderful job of getting that presentation together for us today. And then to our attendees and all our preceptors, thank you so much for showing up today for this event in our virtual world where meetings and the presentations are just like bombarding our days. Just want to make sure that we say thank you and for giving our interns your support, but not just for today, but throughout our whole entire internship. Just a few closing remarks as well. Please watch for your email from Juan for your continuing ed credits. And one last request also is for you to fill out the post evaluations for our entire event today, which I have included. And then also, the recorded presentations will be available at the UWGB Weebly website, which I also just sent the link for. So I just want to wish you well and wish that you have a great day. And with that, I will let Heather do any closing remarks that she may have.
Thanks, Crystal. So I was just getting my camera back on here, but great presentations, wonderful job, everyone, leadership team, all of our presenters. I'm just really impressed. I was able to hop on all the presentations that I wasn't able to see when we did our practice run. So really, I think, Crystal, you covered everything as far as just kind of housekeeping so that our attendees know what to expect as far as the CEUs being emailed out, and then also getting the link or the information about the recordings once they are ready. So if you wanted to catch the ones that you weren't able to see, and then I do know some people couldn't attend the whole day, so now you'll be able to watch those other presentations as well. So just thank you again for your time and have a wonderful weekend.